It hits you right in the center of your chest. That heavy, cold, sinking feeling when you look at the screen and the money is just gone. Maybe it was a garbage options play you knew was too risky. Maybe it was a small business you poured your absolute soul into for 3 long, grueling years and the margins just collapsed. Or maybe you just trusted the wrong guy with a pitch deck that looked a little too polished. It doesn't really matter how it happened. You're sitting there staring at a 0, or worse, a giant red negative number that makes your stomach turn over. And your brain is absolutely screaming at you. Most people think dealing with a massive financial hit is just about the money. They think it's a cold, hard math problem. They immediately pull up a spreadsheet and try to calculate exactly how many double shifts they need to work or how much leverage they need to pull on the next trade to fill that gaping hole. But the math proves it is actually a neurochemical disaster. It's a grief problem. Because losing money isn't just losing purchasing power. It is losing the time you spent earning it. It's watching your future security vanish in a keystroke. And I see this vicious cycle destroy people all the time. I mean, I'm Heisenbank, and here on Breaking Finance, I look at the ugly numbers every single day. But the ugliest numbers are always the ones that mess with your head. So today, we are going to tear apart exactly what happens to your brain and your bank account when you take a massive hit. I'm going to show you why trying to win it back is mathematically the stupidest thing you can possibly do. We are going through the exact step-by-step financial triage to stop the bleeding. Because understanding this, it is the difference between a temporary painful setback and a permanent life-ruining spiral. The biology of the blow. Let's talk about the biology of losing. When you lose a huge chunk of your net worth, your brain doesn't just register it as a changing digit on a display. Your net worth, your brain doesn't just register it as a changing digit on a brokerage app. It processes it as an existential threat to your actual physical survival. Evolutionarily speaking, if you lost your winter food supply, you died. You starved in the snow. So when your portfolio drops 60% because the market sneezed, your amygdala fires off exactly the same panic signals as a caveman watching his grain burn. Cortisol floods your system. Your heart rate spikes. You literally cannot think straight because the rational prefrontal cortex of your brain shuts down to let the fight or flight instincts take over. This is what behavioral economists call loss aversion. The pain of losing $10,000 is psychologically twice as intense as the joy of making $10,000. It's paralyzing. And what do paralyzed people do? Nothing. Or even better, they do something entirely irrational out of pure, unadulterated panic. They freeze while the stock drops another 20%. Because accepting the loss, hitting that sell button, makes it real. As long as you hold on to that bleeding asset, you can lie to yourself and say it's just a paper loss. The phantom wealth fallacy. Before we get to the really brutal math, we need to clear something up. A lot of you are crying over money you never actually had. I know that sounds harsh, but hear me out. Let's say you bought $10,000 worth of some obscure altcoin. It pumps. Suddenly, your app says you have $100,000. You feel like a genius. You start looking at real estate on Zillow. Then, Elon Musk tweets something weird, the market tanks, and your balance crashes back down to $15,000. You feel like you just lost $85,000. You are mourning $85,000. But you didn't lose $85,000. You made $5,000. Your brain anchored to the absolute highest point, the high water mark, and decided that was your new baseline. It's a phantom loss. You are letting your neurochemistry torture you over a screenshot of unrealized gains. Stop it. The brutal math of the bounce back. Which brings us to the hardest pill you have to swallow today, the math of the bounce back. This is the trap, the absolute meat grinder that catches 90% of amateur investors and struggling business owners who just took a realized hit. Let's look at the numbers. They are disgusting. Let's say you had $100,000 of actual hard-earned cash. You made a terrible call and you lost 50%. You now have $50,000. Most people, in their panicked, cortisol-soaked state, think, okay, I just need to make 50% to get back to where I was. Wrong. It is so brutally wrong. If you have $50,000, a 50% gain is only $25,000. That puts you at $75,000. You are still down a quarter of your entire net worth. To get back your original $100,000 from $50,000, you don't need a 50% return. You need a 100% return. You need to double your money just to break even. Let's make it worse. What if you lost 90%? You gambled on options and your $100,000 is now $10,000. To get back to $100,000 from $10,000, you need a 900% return. 900%! Think about how incredibly hard it was to save that money in the first place. Now, your brain is demanding that you take on insane, reckless amounts of risk to secure a 900% return immediately just to erase the shame of the loss. This is revenge trading. This is throwing good money after bad. You leverage up, you borrow, you buy far out of the money options because they are cheap and offer a 100-to-1 payout. You take out a second mortgage to keep a dead restaurant open for one more month, and you get wiped out completely, from $10,000 to zero to bankruptcy court. Look, if you are sitting there realizing that your own brain is basically hardwired to make you broke during a crisis, you might want to hit subscribe. We use the math to fight the psychology here. It's what we do, and it might just save you retirement. The triage protocol. So how do you actually deal with it? How do you stop the spiral? Step 1 is financial triage. When you are bleeding out in an emergency room, the doctors do not put you on a treadmill to see how fast you can run. They put a tourniquet on the wound. They stop the bleeding. You have to liquidate the toxic positions. I know, it burns, it hurts your ego, but you have to cut the cord. If a business is draining your personal savings by $5,000 a month with no real path to profit, you shut it down. You fire the staff, you sell the equipment for pennies on the dollar, and you walk away. If you are holding a stock that is down 80% because you're praying for a miracle bounce, sell it. Take the remaining 20% in cash. Cash doesn't bleed. Cash just sits there. It gives you room to breathe. Taking the loss gives you finality. The anxiety of watching a ticker slowly bleed you dry is worse than the grief of the actual loss. Once you hit sell, the worst has happened. You can finally sleep. The shame tax. Because here's the thing nobody talks about when you lose a lot of money. The shame tax. We tie our entire identity, our entire self-worth to our net worth. You feel stupid. You hide it from your spouse. You lie to your friends when you go out to dinner. You pretend everything is totally fine while you're having a low-grade panic attack in the bathroom at Applebee's because your card might decline. It's pathetic, but we all do it. I've done it. But that shame, it is ridiculously expensive. Shame isolates you. It keeps you from asking for advice from people who actually know how to manage capital. It keeps you from admitting to your partner that you need to cut household expenses by 30% right now to survive. That you need to cut household expenses by 30% right now to survive the winter. You have to separate your ego from your bank account. You are not your bad trade. You are not your failed business. You are just a person who made a highly statistically probable mistake in a chaotic, unpredictable market. The market doesn't know you exist. It doesn't hate you. It just took your money. Recalibrating to zero. Once you stop the bleeding and you stop lying to yourself, you have to do the hardest thing of all. You have to accept the new baseline. You have to stop anchoring to the high water mark. If you had $1 million and now you have 200,000, you are not a millionaire who is temporarily down 800 grand. You are a guy with $200,000. Period. That is your new starting line. And the absolute second you accept that reality, the pressure comes off. You stop trying to make Hail Mary passes. You stop looking for a lottery ticket. You start looking at boring, reliable investments again, because the math of compound interest still works. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care that you used to be richer. It only cares about what you put in today. The long game math. Let's go back to the boring math, because the boring math is what actually saves your life. Let's say you lost almost everything. You are starting from absolute scratch, nothing but your day job income. If you invest $500 a month, every single month at a totally average S&P 500 level 7% annual return over 30 years, you don't just get your money back, you have nearly $600,000. $500 a month. That's a car payment on a mid-size sedan. The magic isn't in finding the next crypto gem. The magic isn't in being the smartest guy in the room. The magic is in time. When you take a massive loss, you feel like you've run out of time. You feel like the clock ran out on your youth. But unless you are 95 years old, you haven't. You have decades. You have thousands of tomorrows to let compounding do the heavy lifting for you. You just have to be willing to get rich slowly again. You have to swallow your pride, pack a lunch, cancel the subscriptions, and start stacking bricks from the dirt up. Look, taking a massive financial loss is a trauma. Treat it like one. Give yourself time to grieve the lost capital. Be pissed off. Forgive yourself for being an idiot. Because, let's be totally honest with each other, we are all idiots sometimes. But then you have to wake up. You have to stop living in the past where your money used to be and start building the future where your money is going to be. You survived the hit. You're still breathing. Now you just have to do the work. As Henry Ford once said, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. You paid for the lesson. It was an expensive-ass lesson, but you own it now. So use it. I am Heisenbank. See you on the next one.